Hear me, Kim? I mean, Alyssa?
Everything's off. I can hear you though.
Okay, good.
Okay.
You should open it up. Who's that with the picture of all the...
That's Chad.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Steve.
Hey. I see Crystal. Who's connected?
Good.
Oh, there you are. Okay, there you are.
And Bob's on.
Hi, how you doing, Councilman?
I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching this telecast. I hope everyone is doing well. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're conducting this meeting remotely via technology, which is really kind of cool. As a result of the governor's emergency declaration and his temporary adjustment to the Brown Act, we are able to continue with city business while protecting the health and safety of our residents. This is obviously a first for all of us. With his direction, we've asked that all public comments be submitted in advance to this meeting. As we get to each item, our city manager will identify all public comments that have been submitted. The meeting is being streamed on Villa Park TV as well as here. For those interested, it will rerun on Villa Park TV and our website afterwards, as it's regularly done. This is new, obviously, all of us. To plan for all these contingencies, but please bear with us as we move through these kind of uncharted waters, new territory for us. Hopefully we will soon be back meeting in person when all this COVID-19 stuff is over with. Till then, let's get started. I hereby call the meeting to order. Steve, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Colacott?
Here.
Councilman Rossini?
Here.
Councilman Zimmerman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles?
Here.
Mayor Pitts.
Here.
We're all present.
All present. Great. Welcome, everybody. Today, I would like to ask Councilman Rossini if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be honored, thank you. For all participants, please mute microphones while I do this. I have a little experience, and it's better if the rest of us are muted, just so one person is speaking. For all those who are watching and you feel like you want to join along, and I encourage you to do so, please stand, face a flag that is closest to you, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that. Kind of awkward when you do on these. And I'm glad you told everyone to mute because that does help. Now we'll have our presentations from our various partners. Let's start our presentations off with Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and city council members and city staff. Nice to see all of you through the web or whatever we call this. I'm not really sure. So obviously things are a little different for us right now with the whole, people like call it the lockdown situation, this COVID-19. So our report's a little different this month than we would have seen in the past. So just wanted to give you just a little background or kind of a general statement. So as we've been dealing with the pandemic, our goal is to keep the city of Villa Park and its residents safe. We're still working on the whole flatten the curve, or the healthcare issues, practice social distancing, offer essential services, and hand washing, all that stuff. The sheriff's department's posture on that is we're asking for compliance from people. We're not really out taking a hard enforcement on that stuff, but we're just talking to people and advising them of what the appropriate health and safety measures are for that. So that's kind of been our approach with that. So for the month of March, we responded to a total of 223 calls for service. In that time frame, we had actually a pretty good month as our crime was really low. Our crime reports were almost non-existent, very minor stuff. We had one traffic accident at 1700 block of Santiago. It was a hit and run of a parked car at the location there. So that's it as far as our significant activity. On our activity report that I sent to you, we have some information there as far as the COVID-19, when to call 911. So there's stuff there that we're asking that you share with your residents, do's and don'ts on social distancing. Big thing that we've been getting a lot of calls in our areas with the dissemination of the stimulus monies. We're starting to get a lot of calls for fraud and kind of like identity theft activities where people are reaching out to our residents and saying, hey, we can help you cash your check, do all these different kind of scams. You basically take people's money. So we want to make people aware of that, and they can access that from some info at ochealthinfo.com /novel coronavirus. They have information there on that about staying cyber safe. There's also a hotline through the district attorney's office that people can use to contact if they have an issue they think they may be being scammed or have some information to provide, and their number is 714-834-3482. And of course, as always, the residents can contact us. We can come out and provide them that information to them so to help them out with those incidents. So that is all I have.
Thank you, sir. We really appreciate all that you all are doing during these tough times for all of us right now, but we appreciate everything you're doing. Are there any questions for the Sheriff's Department? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next, Orange County Fire Authority.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council and city staff. First of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Barrick Hunter, and I'm your new division chief. I look forward to the opportunity to actually get to meet you all in person and work with you. I'm very excited for this opportunity to serve the citizens of Villa Park. I'll start my report. Since the last council meeting in February, we were dispatched to 72 incidents in the city of Villa Park. Majority of those incidents were medical emergencies. COVID-19 related, it looks like 8 of them were possibly COVID-19 related type of emergencies. We did have a couple hazardous conditions standbys and an auto alarm. As far as OCFA, I'll give you a brief rundown on what we're doing with COVID-19. As it started, obviously we're monitoring the state, federal and local guidelines. We're working with the OC Health as well as the CDC to establish policies. We've put together our incident management team, and they've helped not only our organization, but other organizations, fire departments, and law enforcement throughout the county in gathering personal protective equipment and establishing policies and procedures for employees, as well as dealing with emergencies that we encounter out in the field. With that being said, our call volume has decreased slightly. On average, for the last 6 weeks, we run on approximately 75 COVID-19 related calls a day. We've had 9 firefighters that were exposed and actually got COVID-19. This did not occur on duty. It looks like it occurred off duty. Out of the 9, 8 of the firefighters have returned back to work. We are starting to demobilize our team in preparation for wildfire season, as well as making plans to assist us in dealing with wildfire emergencies that are going to rise during the summer. As temperatures start to rise around California, I'd like to remind everybody to practice water safety. Children and adults, they drown without sound. Drownings usually occur and are the leading cause of death for children under the age of 5. In May through August, the drowning rates nationally increased by 89%, which is different compared to the rest of the year. Some simple steps, I recommend that all adults, as well as children, they swim with a buddy, regardless of the ability of the swimmer. There's no substitute for active supervision, especially if your child is around a pool or you have children around your pool. Due to the social distancing guidelines, non-essential business closures, swimming lessons are most likely not going to occur right now. So it's very important to have active supervision. Don't let the drains drag you down is another slogan we have, so that kids aren't swimming near the drains, because the drains actually provide suction. So if they can swim away from the drains, as well as you can also look into getting safe drains for your pool so it doesn't create a vacuum. And always wear sunscreen, especially in the summertime, and stay hydrated. Try to stay away from the caffeinated drinks as well as the alcohol drinks. Again, it looks like we're going to start to have a warm summer, and the OCFA, we're planning, we're preparing, and we're training for the upcoming fire season. We're doing it through different mediums, but we're out there practicing our social distancing and doing manipulative drills as well. And that is all I have for an update.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
can you hear me okay?
yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to personally thank Chief Hunter for the continuous updates that I get on a daily basis, including calls on the weekend. It has been an unbelievable, effort on behalf of Chief Hunter and obviously the Chief of the Fire Authority, Brian Fennessy. Their efforts, along with the entire group that is working on this, and the whole agency, has just been amazing, and I really appreciate it. It's been able to let me sleep at night, and I know that we're in good hands, and I'd be remiss if I didn't reach out and say thank you. I've also seen the Sheriff's Department out there on patrol, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to them for all their efforts and patrolling our community and keeping us safe. So from my sincerest heart, and on behalf of my family, and I think the entire city, I think we owe Chief Hunter and Chief Newton a huge thanks and debt of gratitude. Thank you both. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could just chime in, just wanted to say welcome to Chief Hunter, and hopefully we get to go back to normal and see you at some of our events and city council, and welcome to Villa Park.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have anyone from Villa Park Library? Okay, I see Ray's joined us. Hi, Ray.
Hey, how you doing, Mayor?
Good, glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Here, Shauna Carlos is, the libraries are closed at this point. So she's been reassigned by the county. I believe she's handling some other duties in library headquarters and working remotely. So the Villa Park Library is closed and we have no report this month.
Okay, all right. Mayor Pro Tem, anything from Vector?
Well, we have our first Zoom meeting tomorrow for budget and finance. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, but I had put in, we did new committee assignments back in January. And then we had our city council meeting in February, and then our vector control meeting after that. And I wasn't able to let everyone know that I had put in for the operations committee so that I could be more involved with the labs and the studies for the mosquitoes and whatnot. And so Tanya was gracious enough to put me on the operations committee. And I am also still on the budget and finance. So we have budget and finance tomorrow, our first Zoom. So I'll let you all know how it goes.
Okay, cool. Any questions, anybody? Okay. Councilman Colacott, Sanitation District? Councilman, you're on mute.
Just had on mute.
There you go.
Okay, Orange County Sanitation District. There was a board meeting on February 26th and the Operations Committee meeting on March 4th, and they were the last live meetings that were held by the board. The April 22nd board meeting was held by teleconference. And given the current emergency conditions, the agenda items were primarily limited to approval of routine operations and maintenance items. At the April 22nd meeting, the proposed 2-year budget was also presented, and adjustments are limited to inflation, debt service payments, planned infrastructure activities, and no staff increases. The proposed budget will be brought back to the board in May with adoption in June. Offline, I encourage staff to prepare a back-to-business plan similar to that being prepared by our city manager, Steve Franks. And this will help to expedite return to our normal operations when allowed by the authorities. And such a plan, draft plan has been prepared. Also in discussion with the general manager and the director of engineering and operations, the capital improvement projects such as the replacement of the trunk line under State College, Boulevard in Anaheim are proceeding without delay, recognizing prudent precautions for the coronavirus. And finally, I also proposed to the chairman of the board and the general manager a proposal to that would save about $1 million worth of potable water with our operations, and that's currently under consideration discussion by the district. And that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Councilman Rossini, the Fire Authority.
Thank you, Mayor Pitts. On March 26th and then again on April 23rd, the Orange County Fire Authority met, and at both meetings they had a very light agenda. On the 26th of March, we went over the minutes from the February 27th meeting, approved those, went over a wildfire awareness and prevention proclamation, a mid-year budget adjustment. We reviewed that and eventually approved that, and then went over the backfill overtime for calendar year 2019. It was a earnings and compensation analysis, and then lastly, a quarterly status report on the Placentia Fire and Emergency Medical Services transition. There has been some articles in the local newspaper, the Register, regarding this, and it sounds like there's a couple different differences of opinion, but I have assurances from the chief, and I believe that the board as a whole feels comfortable that the Orange County Fire Authority is doing its best to work with the city of Placentia in good faith to help them with their transition. And we look forward to seeing them continue to work through their challenges and hopefully put together a well-run fire department if they so choose. During the April 23rd meeting, again, a very light agenda. We had a report from the Budget and Finance Committee chair, and then only a report from the fire chief regarding the COVID-19. That update obviously went over much of what we all know. We obviously are facing a lot of challenges within the county and the fire authority itself, but it seems like our county is doing better than quite a few. And I'm very appreciative of the efforts of Chief Fennessy and the Orange County Fire Authority. And I'd like to thank again Division Chief Hunter and all of the rank and file members for all their efforts throughout this pandemic. In addition, we also, in closed session, we reviewed went over the performance evaluation for the fire chief. And without getting into specifics, by and large, there were very, very good comments about the chief, and we appreciate his efforts during the past year and look forward to working with him this next year. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Okay. Councilman Zimmerman, the Library Advisory Board.
The Library Advisory Board meeting for March and also the Executive Board meeting for April have been postponed until such time as they can get rescheduled or set up to be virtual.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Rossini, Law Enforcement Advisory.
Due to the COVID-19, no meeting. Thank you.
Okay. And Develop Our Community Services Foundation has not met to date since the COVID-19 took place, but we do have a conference call set up tomorrow night for our first time since this whole thing started. So I'll fill you in on the next council meeting. Housing Legislation Committee, we've not met yet at this point in time. We do have an update coming through today as a part of our agenda, so we'll go through that. Let's see, Mayor Pro Tem Bridges at Kramer.
No meeting.
Okay. All right, this is public comment time. So at this time, we will review comments from the members of the public to address any off-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, provided that no action be taken on any off-agenda items unless authorized by law. We will also be reviewing public comments on each agenda item. Steve, is there anyone that wrote in during this time?
No, sir, we did not receive any public comments.
Okay. We'll move on to our public hearings. Our first hearing is to review and waive the reading in full of all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda. I'll now open up the hearing. Staff, please give the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the monthly monthly agenda item that allows us to waive a reading of the ordinance, et cetera, to conduct expeditious meetings. So we would recommend approval.
Okay. Are there any write-ins from anybody regarding any of these items?
No, sir.
Okay. So I will now close the public hearing. Are there any other discussions? Okay. Is there a motion on this matter?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Steve, would you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles,
Yes.
Mayor Pitts.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Our next hearing is regarding the conditional use permit number 2020-01 for 9541 Feather Hill Drive. I will now open the hearing. Staff, please give the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a single-family residential zoning district, and it is a conditional use permit regarding a height restriction for a detached accessory structure. I will let Ray Pasqua, our planning manager provide you the details. Ray?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Mayor Pitts, members of the City Council. Based on our zoning ordinance, any attached accessory buildings that are taller than 15 feet in height requires a conditional use permit or CUP. The CUP before you this evening for your consideration involves 9541 Feather Hill Drive in the E4 zoning district. And the property owner is requesting approval to exceed the maximum allowable height of 50 to construct a freestanding patio cover that measures 16 feet 10 inches as measured from the finished grade. Granting the CUP request is to allow a 1 foot 10 inch deviation to the height of the patio cover. It would yield a better project in terms of architectural design, proportionality, and function. Based on the submittal plans, the patio cover will be designed with a hip style roof that measures 16 feet 10 inches along the ridge line. Then it slopes down on 4 sides, as hip roofs do, to 9 feet as measured from below the fascia board. If averaged out, the height of the patio cover works out to be less than 15 feet, which is well within the maximum allowable height for any building within the residential zoning district. The location of this patio cover will be in the rear yard area of this property along the north property line, which is adjacent to Mountain View Circle. Although it's not required by the zoning ordinance, the property owner secured letters of support from the adjacent property owners that would be most impacted by this patio cover. In addition, there were a total of 26 public hearing notices for this CUP, and to date, staff has not received any comments for or against this request. Based on the close examination of the application and the plans and so forth, city staff is recommending that the city council approve conditional use permit number 2020-01, subject to compliance with the conditions of approval contained in resolution 2020-3475. That concludes my staff report, and at this time I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. Council members, any questions? Ray, I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any structures this high, you know, other than homes maybe potentially, but do we have any backyard structures that are this high?
Not that I know of that, you know, haven't already gone through this CUP process. We did, I think, last year on Loma, we approved a 2-story accessory dwelling unit. It's that corner lot on Cannon Street and Loma Drive, I believe. It's
Okay.
it's coupled with a brand new single family residential, and then this other structure was technically detached from the main residence. So that's the only thing I can think of at this point in time.
And did anyone get noticed behind the property owner?
Yeah, everyone within 300 feet radius of the property on Feather Hill was afforded a copy of the public hearing notice, and no feedback were received.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other discussions regarding this matter? Do we have any public comments? Steve?
No, sir. No written comments from anybody.
Okay. I guess I will close the public hearing at this time. I have a motion on this matter.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. First and a second. Steve, please call the vote.
Okay, Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles,
Yes.
Mayor Pitts.
No.
Okay, that passes by a 4-1 vote.
Thank you. Now we will consider our consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered routine and are usually enacted by one motion approving the recommended action listed on the agenda. Any member of the city council, staff, or public may request any item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion or separate action. Council members, there are items from number 3 to number 12. Are any of those that you would like to remove from the consent calendar at this time? No one? Okay. All right. So Steve, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Steve, will you call the vote?
Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles,
Yes.
Mayor Pitts.
Yes.
So the consent calendar passes item 3 through 12 with a 5-0 vote.
Okay, on to new business now. Our first item of new business is the First Amendment to the employment contract for our city manager. Steve, I guess we'll get you to give us a report on your contract.
Well, actually, Mayor, this is Todd. I'll give that report. Steve cannot.
Oh, good, good, okay.
Contract. The city council met in closed session to give the city manager a performance review. After that favorable review, we were directed to put a contract extension together for the city manager. The terms are self-explanatory. As in the report, it is a 3-year contract extension. And then due to the current financial uncertainty in the future, the city manager voluntarily agreed to a salary reduction from 27,115, 200, and depending upon how things play out in the future, subject to future reconsideration. So the contract amendment before you, all the previous terms and conditions are the same, other than the salary is slightly reduced and the time period is extended for 3 years. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council members, do you have any questions of staff?
Just a comment. This is Councilman Colacott. I think actually our city manager offered to reduce his salary. So it was a magnanimous action on his part, and it's gratefully appreciated.
That is correct.
Anyone else? Steve or Todd, are there any comments from any other parties?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion on this? Was there any
So moved.
discussion? Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Can we please cast our vote, Steve?
Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pitts, Miles,
Yes.
Mayor Pitts, sorry.
Absolutely, yes.
That passes by a 5-0 vote. Thank you.
Steve, I have to say, you and I have been working closely as you have with other council members doing this whole COVID-19 mess, and I have to tell you, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate all the work that you do in leading this city through these problems and these times right now. Because I'll tell you, your leadership has been amazing. Some of the ideas and thoughts, and your transparent updates and interactions with all the council members has been absolutely amazing. And your relationships with people have paid off to help us, and I just can't thank you enough. And on behalf of the entire city, we really appreciate all you do, and we're glad that we're doing this.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. On to the next item of business regarding extending the NB5 engineering contract. Staff, please give a staff report.
Yes, you'll recall, Mayor, that we contract for our engineering services with NV5. And currently, I want to say what it used to be Civil Source. I was trying to recall the last name, but they were bought out by NV5. Our contract with them expires June 30th, 2020. And during the course of the last couple of months, I've been discussing with the management of NV5. Originally, they requested an increase, but based on the environment and the world we're facing today, I said I was unwilling to give them any sort of increase. So we sort of settled at a compromise and saying, okay, no increase, and we'll reevaluate in a year. So this is a 1-year extension, same terms and conditions and price as currently. So with that, I would answer any questions and recommend approval of the 1-year extension.
Council members, any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, are there any public comments, Steve?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion or further discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Steve, call for the vote, please.
Councilman Colacott?
He's on mute. Councilman Colacott, can you hear us?
I ducked out because I may have a conflict with the, as I'm currently an employee of NV5, so I turned off the video and turned off the audio.
Okay, so we'll count that as a abstention or removal, I guess. Todd, how do we classify that?
Yeah, so Councilman Colacott has, for the purposes of technology, left the meeting and declared a conflict. Therefore, he has not participated, and it will be deemed a recusal, and he will not vote on the matter. Correct, an abstention.
Okay, so with that, we'll go to Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles. Did we lose her?
She's on mute.
Crystal?
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Mayor Pitts.
No.
Okay, that passes by a 3-1-1 vote.
Okay. Councilman Colacott, you can come back in now. The next item of business is the adoption of the 2020-2021 street project list for SB1 road maintenance and rehabilitation account. Staff, please give the report.
Yes, this is SB1, which was adopted by the governor in 2017. It's the Road Repair and Accountability Act. Basically, we're required to add a list of eligible projects that we use. We are using the majority of this money and any available money for the current project list. So what we would be adding Santiago Boulevard from the eastern limit, which would be Sycamore to Wanda Road, to the previously approved, which would exhaust all of our potential SB1 revenues for 1920 and 2021. So there's no fiscal impact on this action. It is something we need to submit a list accordingly. So we would have to forward that. So with your approval, we would do so.
Council members, any questions? Okay. Steve, is there anyone that wrote in for this comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion or further discussion?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Steve, please call the vote.
Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles,
Yes.
Mayor Pitts.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Okay. To item number 16, now we will discuss the city budget update.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll have a presentation. Hopefully, Alyssa can help us, and we'll move to the slide presentation. She's going to do a screen share here. Okay, so one of the biggest questions I get, and you'll hear from a lot of cities, et cetera, is where do we stand with our budget? So we're taking this opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to bring you up to speed. Go ahead and go to first slide, second slide. Okay, so where are we for the current year? Currently, we had about $4.6 million budgeted in our budget for revenue. Based on estimates that we have at this point, we expect to be about 82,000 under budget. So what does that 82,000 mean? Our property tax apportionment, which we believe is come in very close to our budgeted levels, which means basically people paid their property tax. Because of what they call the teeter program, we are pretty much allocated we are apportioned our full allocation of the billing amount. However, there's a little bit of a low supplemental roll, and that's about 16,000. That's not because of late payments. That's simply because an estimate of when we put together the budget, what we estimated and what the AV billings were slightly less. The big issue for us is, and most cities you'll find, is sales, use, transit occupancy tax, et cetera. We don't have a transit occupancy tax or hotel tax, it's referred to, but we do have a sales and use taxes. So that's complicated because the governor approved a deferral of payment on sales taxes for companies making a certain, less than a certain amount of gross revenue per year. So that deferral does not mean it's lost revenue, it's delayed receipt. So we actually don't know where that lands. And then there's actually a decrease of sales tax revenue that we have. As you know, most of our sales tax revenue here is from our town center. Oddly enough, one of the stores, Ralph's, has actually done fairly well. How that actually plays out, we don't know, because people were buying a lot in anticipation of staying at home and cooking at home, et cetera. But we lost a lot of sales tax from the businesses and whatnot. So an estimate is 20% loss, basically 2 months of sales tax revenue is what we're anticipating. That's a conservative estimate. I've heard some cities using somewhere between 25 and 30%. I think that's a bit much, and it's really hard to tell. But from us, we have about approximately 220,000 of sales tax revenue comes in from the city. So our loss is about 58,900, somewhere in that range is what we're anticipating. Furthermore, our licenses and permits, we have had a slight drop off in those activities, although we've seen a real recent uptick in licenses, which we can talk about next item. I think that's almost explainable, but we're having a slight downtick in our licenses and permits. What's also is our, you'll see in there that we had some revenues anticipated for our passports. We stopped issuing passports and we don't anticipate issuing those because those require face-to-face interactions, and it's just not a safe type of situation to conduct that. So our estimated loss is about 82,000 under budget. Where are we under expenditures? That's the other side of things, because it's not just a one-sided equation. You sort of have a balance here. So our expenditures, we had 4.9 or almost $5 million budgeted. The big question is, how can we have more expenditures than revenue? Actually, what we use is we use carry forward unexpended funds from last year, and that covers your difference. So that's why, if anyone's wondering why expenditures equal, we have a very balanced budget, a very conservative balanced budget with a zero net difference. So at this point in time, we're going to be at about $1.5 million under budget. Now that's just not because of happenstance, but it's because we've taken some actions, and why we've taken those actions, and we're going to sort of readjust our position shortly. So basically, salaries and employee benefits. We have an employee who's out and been out. Rich Manning, as you well know, has had to have some medical condition addressed. So he's been out, and hopefully he's doing well. And if he's out listening, we wish him the best. But that's affected us, and we had some slight salary savings. We're also in slight anticipation of some of our budget savings that we'll have in my salary that you just approved for the next couple of months. Operating expenses, we've deferred some spending. I think the mayor asked me the other day if we did some, how we were doing with our spending and whatnot, or we cut things. We've been very frugal and careful in what we're doing. And so we'll have about a 277,000 savings there. And capital projects, these are not necessarily, and equipment purchase, not necessarily permanently delayed, but they have been delayed. And we'll go into that in the next slide if you would, Chip. But bottom line, we're about 1.4 million. Net position favorable, if that's makes sense. That means our expenditures are under our projected revenue by about 1.4 million. So how do we get there? And how are we getting to 1.4? There's a lot of things we've done, and I kind of wanted to help you because they're big chunks that get us there. It's not just, it's not magic we pulled. So you'll recall we have about 150,000 that we budget for budget contingency every year. I expect, even with the COVID expenditures such as addressing some facility issues here and some signage and some things that we have to do, masks, et cetera, in the office, et cetera, we'll at most spend in the range of $20,000 there. One of the things we have done, so we have a savings there. The sidewalk, we repair ADA improvement. You recall that I guess it was Mayor Rossini at the time was pushing for 40,000 of an ADA improvement. We were planning on getting to the spring, but we aren't going to get there, and I don't know that we've moved forward on that. The State of the City inaugural event was Mayor Pro Tem Miles. It was an inaugural type of thing we were planning this spring, and that was even prior to COVID was rescheduled or postponed to the fall. So there's about a $10,000 savings there. The automation of the council chamber and conference room, we had 75,000. You'll notice that on these, some of these are red, and I'll go back to explaining those in just a second. Pavement rehabilitation, which was, sorry about that, some basically pothole things that Councilman Colacott has been talking. We budget 40,000 there. We have slurry sealed, but we were at 125,000, and our big street project, which is design, about 753,000. So those three projects are all about pavement and repair. We also had a Wanda Greenbelt project for $50,000 that we were planning on doing something in March, but the pandemic hit and changed our reality. So those are things that are either held or for right now. That doesn't mean they are not priority projects. So with that in mind, the ones that are in red, because we're 1.4 million to the good at this point, and these are essential projects in my mind, and I'll go through them. With the street projects, those are essential. I think we've had a lot of discussions and efforts over the year. We're actually ready to move forward on the RFP for the design for the street projects. I would recommend we move forward on these street projects, and that's my plan at this point. And then at the same time, the automation of the council chambers. As you get here, and as we've sort of, it maybe looks seamless, or maybe it looks a little bit ragged here, but it's been a lot of creative activity to try and get us even on a Zoom platform here. This facility, this technology that's in this, and even to allow our people to work remotely was a little bit challenging, but I'll give the credit. We've been very fortunate to have some great people working with us on video and in our IT, Brea IT we contract with. But we have some challenges. This building was, and this automation element was simply not built for the kinds of technology that's currently out there and the types of presentations. Now, one of the things that's obvious is when we start doing Zoom meetings and things like that, it's really challenging to get going. We actually had them in this afternoon, and they're kind of improvising to even get this televised because the splitter that works with our projector died this afternoon, and so they're improvising to get something else going. So in my mind, I don't think this technology issue is going to go away. I think one of the realities is we'd all wanted to upgrade and get us into the 21st century. So I think we need to move forward on that project, and this COVID has sort of accentuated the problem and sort of made us realize this. So there's two elements of the council chamber and conference room. It's the council chamber and the conference room. We have our challenges, but I think we should move forward on both the pavement projects, those three, and the council chamber. So they're in red. To the extent, and it's my plan to move forward, we would still be $430,000 under budget, and we would carry that forward into next year. Now, why is that important? Because there's some uncertainties we're facing. If you go to the next slide, we have some real uncertainties we're facing. Now, we have a $4.5 million budget. If we have 430,000, so we're carrying about a 10% carry forward just there. I mean, just right there. So that's a big chunk. I think we have a potential to cover that. We also have a very healthy reserve that we need to address, and we're going to be working on some issues down the road that I'll talk to you at a later date. But so in the situation of where we are, I think carrying forward an FBA, or a fund balance unreserved, about 430,000 is a very safe and acceptable type of thing. We have some revenue issues that we're going to have to worry about, uncertain on the sales use tax and what the revenue loss will be. Now, one of the things that's really kind of uncertain here, and why I say we may or may not have that loss, because as I understanding that, and Mayor Pitts and I've been working on this with the other mayors and been on countless phone calls. The Congress right now, as we speak, is working on Recovery Act 4.0, whatever you want to call it, which basically would allow an allocation of funding, trillions, billions, whatever the number is. I've lost track of zeros, but basically it would be allocated to cities to help address and replace some of the revenue loss we have. Now, we potentially will be getting our expenditures reimbursed, but that's only going to be, like I said, about $20,000 worth of expenditures related to COVID. Our big issue is our revenue loss, but that's something that we don't know, or we may know what we get. The other issue is we are primarily property tax funded in this city. Property tax is our main meal. It's the main course. So to the extent that we have a lean meal, if we go into, we had everyone pay, we had about a 97%, the county did a 97% collection rate, which is exactly the same as last year, within a 0.1% of where it collected last year. But they added valuation increase which is what was budgeted. So we are in a good situation this year. To the extent that we enter into a long-term recession and property values go down, that will be more of a challenge. Now, will that hit us immediately? Probably not, because it usually takes some time for AV valuation changes to get incorporated into the tax rolls. So that's going to take us some time. On the other hand, we do have some continued, we have continued building activity. And as you'll recall, every time a building permit is requested and we give one out, to the extent that there's value added to that building, that gets reported to the county, and the property tax roll gets adjusted accordingly by the assessor. So we work in concert with the county and they do their job. So there's a lot of uncertainty where the economy goes. If this is a long-term drawn-out recession, then that property tax is a challenge. And we'll see where that goes. Again, I don't expect that to be right away. The big issue I just mentioned earlier was the CARES Act funding. I don't know what the actual acronym stands for anymore, because they all get kind of meshed, because there's a lot of elements in there. What it is the County of Orange is going to get close to, well, they've gotten $555 million. It's in the county treasury as of last Wednesday. That is to help reimburse lost expenditures. So and FEMA at the same time, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to COVID. But basically, the CARES Act money, there's a very strong potential that we're going to get some kind of reimbursement or a thing. So the uncertainty on revenues is this a long-term issue, or is this a one-time loss of revenue? That's sort of where we stand, and hopefully the economy, the longer we're closed, the businesses are shut down, the longer this revenue losses, it tends to be a loss long-term and not a one-time. On the expenditure side, we have contract services increases and adjustments. I'm going to jump down a little bit. What I'm talking about there is one of the things we just addressed is our engineering contract, which we kept flat. And thank you, council, for that vote. The sheriff contribution that we have for them, most recent estimates they entail an increase. They're going back and sharpening their pencil for a lot of reasons with the adjustments and things they have to do. So we're still working on that. CalPERS is another issue. We pay into CalPERS. Now, we're not a big issue. We're already probably about 84% funded in our liability, but that's with the current discount rate. And the current discount rate means that you're built on, based on the level of return that the CalPERS gets on their respective investments. They do this actuarial assumption. So to the extent that a lot of their investments are in market and real estate, et cetera. So the extent that there is a recession and the CalPERS does not get the level of return, and they start dropping the discount rate, we're going to see an increase in our contribution requirement. Now, is this going to decimate us? No, and this is the subject we're going to talk about down the road a little bit later, how we can address that. We are addressing it anyway with the PARS contribution to Section 115 trust we have. So the city has already taken very responsible actions to move us up. And all things being equal, with that last contribution, we'd be at 85% funded, which is extremely well funded for a retirement system. But if the discount rate drops, we could drop back into the 70s and that could change us. However, it is likely that CalPERS probably won't address those rate adjustments because they do a 7-year sliding scale. I think it's 7-year, 5 or 7 year, but anyway, it's a sliding scale, and it's probably by the time they readjust it, we're not going to get that until 2021, 22. So not next year, but the year after. So these are issues that we potentially face. So that being said, I am still very confident in moving forward in those projects that I highlighted in red, and that it's my intent to move forward in those. Whether we do them now or whether we do them next year, we're still going to need to do them. Those are key, essential projects. I would also argue that our pavement projects are essential to maintaining our property values. So we had money budget for those, and we need to continue that. And also, the technology has shown us that we need to move forward on sort of catching up to the 21st century and maybe getting a little bit ahead of the game. Where are we? Next slide. So where are we? Bottom line, I think bottom line, we are in a good position right now. Financially, I am not worried at this point, and I say that very confidently, that we are talking about recovery. If we were talking about long-term, I think we might have a little bit of different discussion, but I think we are talking about recovery, and I am pretty confident that the Villa Park economy and our overall economy will maintain and hold its own. So I'm pretty optimistic. Our next step would be to move forward in our budget for preparation process, which would be the 2021 starting July 1st. And our plan was to have a budget workshop on Monday, May 11th at 6 p.m. We will have a lot more estimates. We'll have our property tax reconciliation done for apportionment. We'll have our sales tax estimate. We'll have a lot more contract estimates rolled in. So we'll be able to give you a lot more definition on the variances and things we're going to face. However, again, I'm very confident that we are in a position of moving forward, and I would prepared to answer, and that's my plan at this point. If you have any questions or concerns, I can certainly answer them now.
Council, any questions or comments?
None. Thank you.
Looking forward to the budget workshop, and we can go through this stuff then too.
Mayor Pro Tem, anything? Okay.
All right, I'm trying to be respectful and make sure you can't hear my dog barking. No, thank you.
Well, that's the new reality for these kinds of events. Between childcare and puppy dogs, that's what we all hear during the day, so it's okay. Well, there's no vote on this, so Steve, thank you for doing this and putting it together.
So I just would leave the residents of Villa Park should feel confident in the actions that are taken by the council. You have been a very conservative council, and you've set yourselves up and set us up in a city to be able to move forward and provide the level of services that they're used to.
Very good.
We are very blessed.
We are.
Well done, Steve.
And again, fortunate to have you at the helm.
Amen.
So next item number 17, we'll now discuss the Villa Park Business Recovery Grant Program. I'm going to defer to Mayor Pro Tem to preside over this particular item because I have a conflict, as I am a small business owner in Villa Park, and I'm going to excuse myself. And Steve, I'd ask you to text me. I'm going to leave, actually. And would you please text me and let me know when I can resume?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Steve, item 17, could you please give the staff report?
Okay, this is kind of an item that I have been working on candidly, and sort of something I realized that is probably the biggest impact that we're going to see in Villa Park. And I already mentioned it, and I orchestrated the agenda so that you could see that. Our biggest loss is our sales tax, and it's our economy. It's the retail, and if you go into town center, you see the activity is primarily focused right now, the takeout and the restaurants, and then also Ralph's and the pharmacy. That's really what's going and keeping going, and the banks, of course. But candidly, we have a lot of businesses that are suffering, those in the town center and some small businesses in Villa Park that are otherwise affected. The President Trump and Congress have approved multiple funding assistance programs, including SBA, Small Business Administration loans, the Paycheck Protection Program, which I believe has now a second phase to that. the economic injury disaster loans, and they've done some grant programs, et cetera. However, we've also reached out to our business and let them know. However, in talking to, we have some businesses that they're shuttered, literally shuttered and closed for the time being. One of the things that's really important is how do we help rejuvenate those and get those kickstarted and going? Hopefully, like I say, this is not a long-term layout, a short-term. So one of the things that I read when I received the funding guidelines, a copy of those for the CARES Act, I received them, I want to say about a little over a week ago, the 23rd, I guess, is when I received them from the county who received the money. Basically, 55% of that 150 billion goes to states and 45% goes to local jurisdictions with a population over 500,000. We're not going to have any city that's going to qualify for that. So the County of Orange is getting $555 million to address these things, COVID related. Now, it's really important is that these expenditures have to be expenditures related to public health emergencies, actions that were taken. They can't be something that was budgeted. So it can't be activities that you already had, you're planning just to bail out your budget. And it has to be between March 1st and December 30th. So I got those specific guidelines. I started going through them. And some of the key criteria was it can't be used for replace lost revenue. So that 58,000 we lost for sales tax, this phase of the CARES Act is not going to fund it. However, interestingly enough, if you look at the guidelines, it's item number 5 on page 3, which is attached. You can see it does allow for provision of economic support in connection for businesses for COVID-19, such as the first bullet point is expenditures related to the provision of grants to small businesses to reimburse the cost of business interruption caused by required closures. That's the thing that really hits me. Businesses aren't pulling in revenue, but they've got expenses. They're paying their leases. Sometimes they're paying their employees because they're trying to keep them on retainer, or even if they're paying just their health insurance. So they're paying something and they're struggling because they're getting no income. So my thought was, look, the county, and I've talked to the county CEO, he says he agrees that this is an eligible expense. So if the city were to initiate a program such that we created sort of like a grant program, not a loan program, but a grant. This is money that would be given, and we'll capitate that amount. I'm not sure exactly where it would be, but the CEO of the county tells me he believes somewhere between 50 to 75 million will be available countywide. Now, we're a small city, so we're probably not going to get a lot. However, we can probably, if I could be creative, we can probably come up with a program that can get some grants or something. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 5,000, 10,000 or something that can help some of these businesses. Now, maybe that isn't a lot, but if it's amount that pays a rent for a month so they can keep going, or help to keep their employees going on board, I think it's well worth our expenditures, and that's something that's important to me, that we get this business structure maintained and we show them support. Now, how do we do that? What our focus would have to be, in my mind, would be the businesses that are owned and operated out of Villa Park. Now, we have a lot of business. We have over 500 businesses that have Villa Park business license, and maybe they're all entitled. But I think one of the things that I really want to focus on is those that we live and shop and work here. So the businesses that here, their focus. That doesn't mean we would open it up to all those businesses that legitimately have a business license with Villa Park. There's 2 incentives for doing it to open a business license. One, that we probably get an application for additional business license that we didn't anticipate. And number 2, it is those that are legitimately operating within the rules of Villa Park. So what we're thinking is we get individual grant applications under standard format. And how do you evaluate them? That's going to be the challenge. So we probably look at some items like what their estimated revenue loss, their assistance that they requested, other types of grants that they received. I mean, did they go out and reach to payroll protection? We aren't and should not be the first sort of assistance they're requesting. They ought to be able to have utilize some of the other programs. We've made a lot of that information available. But if they are and they're still short, maybe we can fill that gap. So we want to get that information out. We get an individual app. We'll send this out to all of our businesses that are eligible, that have a business license. That would be the primary criteria. Now, who we would use to evaluate, I'm thinking that probably we have some very strong, wonderful talent in Villa Park. I had a discussion with the chairman of the Villa Park Investment Advisory Committee, Mr. Bill Underwood. And I said, Bill, you know, you guys, there are some members on there that are residents, many of them long-term residents, many of them business owners, many of them, you know, you got Lynn Doty, who's teaches economics and business at Chapman, who would understand values and things like that. So, and that makes it sort of apolitical. It doesn't, they're not coming to the council and, you know, it's somebody's friend and somebody there, but they go through an evaluation process. So my thought is and Bill and I agreed we could create a criteria, come forward with a set of recommendations for grant funding, and we would have the council approve that slate of grants and move forward. Now, the key here is, this is not something that Villa Park is funding itself or we can afford, but if there is federal money that is supporting this kind of activity, which it clearly does, and it's allowable, I think we ought to be pushing for those kinds of things. And my thought would be, and I've already approached the county CEO about that, and I said, Frank, would you be willing to sort of maybe set up a contract with us where we have an agreement, this is the process and a program, and you contract with us to go ahead and do it and administer it, and you fund it. And he said, I'm very open and willing to have those conversations. So, sorry, my light goes out. So anyway, the county seems willing, we're primed. What I need, candidly, is city council approval on two elements. I would like to have authority to initiate a program, obviously dependent upon the availability of federal money. And number two, to work with the Investment Advisory Committee to return to the city council with recommended grant awardees and grant amounts. I think this is a really valuable tool to help stimulate the economy and continue to restart the economy in Villa Park it's one thing to say we're reopening. It's hard to reopen if you don't have the capital to pay employees and you don't have the money to pay rent, et cetera. So I think maybe that little bit extra that can help us do something positive for those. In the long term, I think it would pay for the residents and pay for the city itself, the quality of life that goes on here. So with that, my recommendation is to get approval of the thing and to give me direction or authority to work with the Investment Advisory Committee to return to the council.
Okay, council, anybody have any comments?
Great idea, Steve, and thank you for being proactive in this and to help our community. Great idea.
Councilman Zimmerman?
You mentioned we have over 500 businesses. Any kind of, have you and Bill already talked at all about how you might whittle down or think about who would get those, or if there's any sort of criteria you've set in your head to prove?
Yeah, one of the things that we're probably focused on most is the small businesses, because, you know, I mean, I don't mean to be, you know, a large corporate, you know, Ralph's or Kroger's, they probably have the means, although, you know, to probably sustain through this and work through it, to take out loans, whatever they might do. A small business might not have the means to do that. So our focus is really first and primary, and Bill and I both agreed, is to keep those small businesses. Secondly, to keep the employees, those businesses that are interested in keeping employees working. That's another key element. And then thirdly, those, like I say, not that necessarily the determining criteria, but those that are owned and operated by Villa Park residents is probably another issue that we want to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone else is eliminated, because I don't want to do that, because there's a lot of businesses that don't necessarily are owned by people that live in Villa Park, but they do contribute greatly to the quality of life in Villa Park. And if we can help them, I'm not averse to that. But those are the sort of priorities. And I think what Bill and I talked about is coming back and sort of seeing what we get as applications, because people have to apply for it. We're not just going to throw the money out there. We want to, you know, it's not proportioned to everybody. They have to apply, and they have to tell us what they want to use it for. And we sort of listen and evaluate and work it through that way. And we can come back with a balanced set of recommendations for you. But I think they're the basic criteria that Bill and I have talked about.
I think that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. And I fully expected, given your thought and how much you've already put into this and well, you've guided us so far, that you would indicate those things. I just wanted to hear them out loud, but thank you very much. Those are excellent.
Vince, do you have anything?
Yes, you know, when Steve first discussed this with me, I couldn't be more excited to hear that there was some relief for our local businesses, and I concur. The Bank of America, the Wells Fargo's, the Union Banks, the Chases, the Ralphs, they have a large corporate arm that they can lean on if they're struggling locally. And that's to take nothing away from their employees or management. I support all of them to the degree that it's appropriate. But this truly is geared towards the local businesses and those, in my opinion, that show documented hardship and that need a helping hand, a grant, a bridge back to some level of normality. So I just want to thank Steve for really, again, showing an incredible degree of leadership and ingenuity. Well done, and you have my full support. I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Before we do that, I have a couple comments or questions, actually, Steve. First, what kind of oversight would be in place to make sure that these small business in Villa Park that was awarded this grant actually used it to do their payroll or pay their lease or their mortgage or their, sick leave for eligible employees? Or are we just not going to monitor it and just say, hey, you met these other criteria because you were small and you lived in VP and you have a business in VP? So I'd kind of like to know, is there a plan for that?
Sure. I come from the world of government, 37 years now. Everything has an audit. Everything has a potential audit. And I think one of the conditions is that when we sign off on this, any grant and the council eventually approves, those grants would become basically a contract with them, potentially auditable upon anything. And so randomly, perhaps we do. At a minimum, we probably request a reconciliation of how the items were spent. So that's at a minimum that we request, but subject to audit if we should sing like, yeah, it doesn't seem like that's what you really did. How come you got you reconstructed your facade of your building? That doesn't look like you were planning to do. So we can go in and check and say, can you show us? And we would have a grant agreement, contractual sort of agreement with each one of them saying, here's what it is, here's the expectation. And we would have some sort of follow-up report financially, whether it's like, here's what I paid my employees and just what I did or whatever the course may be. So there would be, yes, some sort of follow-up. I don't want to say that we would audit every one because I don't think that's something we want to do. I hope we want to reach out pretty far, but I think we would have some sort of trail on every one of them.
Okay. And then the second one, love your idea about having the investment advisory committee kind of, run it, pick it, receive all the grants and stuff. But my only concern is, they meet quarterly. So would they be willing to meet monthly if needed? So that way, people aren't waiting 3 months.
Yeah, no way. This is sort of a task force. It's not really the investment advisory. It would be sort of volunteers from the investment advisory committee because some of them may decline and not want to do it because of other time commitments or whatever. This is going to be involved, I would imagine, a front-end intensive effort to be weaned off as we make some of the awards and spend any money we might have or be available to get reimbursed for. So I think that's sort of an issue that we want to make sure. But Bill was very clear that he obviously wasn't going to require that anyone do it. It would have to be volunteers. He thinks that there be, and he was going to approach them. But obviously we didn't want to approach him without you approving a program at this point. But that's where it would be. And it would be, obviously, it would be outside the scope of their normal investment advisory committee meetings. So it would require them, yes, to meet more often, yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, if the council approves and he does need volunteers and it's not a conflict, I'm more than happy you can throw my name in the hat. But are there any other comments from the council?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to address that. One of the things that I really want to do is keep this away from being potentially political. The council would be the one that ultimately approves the grants. So you would have, it would potentially, somebody could approach you and say, get me on the list and whatever, I don't want that to be the case. I really want to make this an objective and evaluation by some finance professionals. They come to you with their recommendations. And in the council, as a rule, all members of the council would have a uniform shot at approving it without necessarily entailing any work. So with all due respect, it wasn't intended to exclude you, but it kind of was.
No problem. I was just trying to, make sure it happened, but I trust you, so that's fine. Okay, council, any other comments? Okay, do I have
more questions about the process? Right now, are we just giving approval for the next phase of this, or what's are you like setting up guidelines, or what exactly are we looking at as the next step that we're approving right now?
So the next step would authorize me to move forward with Bill, orchestrate a program, and to return to the council with grants. I mean, this is going to move very quickly because the money is sitting in the county treasury at this point. So our intent would be to come back as soon as we can work through the system and come up with parameters of what it would be and get the information out. So our goal would be to move very quickly. I want to say the CARES money has to be spent between now and December 30th of this year. So but businesses are struggling right now. I mean, the reality is what they're facing immediately. So what the authority are doing is allowing me to move forward, construct the program, work with the investment advisory committee as an evaluation committee, and come back to you with a slate of recommendations as far as award contract and awardees.
So you want to go ahead and get all of the grants submitted, review all of them, do all of the work, come back to us with a completed program. This is like the full green light to do everything.
Yeah, my concern here is that we talked about, well, should we set a limit or whatever? We don't know what we're going to be asked of people. So, we don't know what they're looking at and saying, and we don't know what the stories are. So it's kind of what we wanted to do is move forward. But the key here is there's going to be a high demand for the money in the county. So I want to be able to have the authority to move forward, contract with the county, or at least get a contract in place so we can reserve a place at the table for potential funding from this CARES Act, and yes, move forward on the program. Again, this is lightning speed for anything I've ever seen in government or anything, but this is unfortunately the reality in the world we're living in. Right now, you're looking at at May 1st, people having to pay rent and things that can't do it. So it's a pressing need. We need to move on.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the initiation of a Villa Park COVID-19 Business Recovery Grant Program.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Steve, will you take the votes?
Okay, Councilman Colacott,
Yes.
Councilman Rossini,
Yes.
Councilman Zimmerman,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles.
Yes. And will you please text Mayor?
Test him. He just sent me a note asking if they're done yet. We can get him back. Okay. Okay, so that passes by a 4-0 vote. 4-0-1. He should be joining us, hopefully.
He's back.
Is he? Okay. Why does your screen? I don't know. I haven't completely figured out the technology. Mine doesn't show yet. So.
He's back and is still muted.
You have a gallery view, right, Steve? Do you see everything?
I sell this stuff for a living. You think I know how to use it?
Yes, I have a screen, but it doesn't show it. It only shows a broadband. I don't have it covering the full, thing. Mayor, just to keep you up to date, the council approved it on a 4-0 vote, so we'll move to item number 18.
Okay. So you're up, Steve. It's the city manager report.
Okay, there's a couple things I want to bring up. First of all, as Ray will tell me, and Ray reminds me, that there are two, I have authority to authorize requests for minor adjustments that result in a decrease of not more than 25% of side yard setbacks. So a rear side yard setback. So it's an administrative item, the authority that was given to me in the ordinances. So we have two properties. One, it was 9362 Hazel Circle, which the applicant requested approval to decrease the minimum interior side yard setback from 13 feet 7 inches to 10 feet 2 inches, which is a deviation of 3 feet 5 inches, or 25%, to the residents along South Side property, and that's for a project they're putting in there. Mr. Brian Scott was the applicant, 9362. He submitted support materials from his neighboring residents who were supportive, so I granted that authority. That's for the record. Secondarily, an action you previously took at 9541, the Lawrence family requested on 9541 Feather Hill requested a side yard setback adjustment from 10 feet to 7 feet 6 inches, which is also 25% for a freestanding, the same facility that we talked about, and from the north side of the property line. It is adjacent to the property line. The adjustment is a deviation, is a variance from the property line, which is directly next to Mountain View Circle. So there is no resident next to it, but she did submit support materials from the neighbors. So with that, I also granted that. So those are for the record. So I think, Ray, that accomplishes what I need to there, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
So what I wanted to do too is the mayor had asked me to give a COVID update. We've sort of gone through some elements of COVID update, and I will catch up because there's multiple pieces.
Yeah, it changes every 5 minutes, and the flood of emails is amazing, what we get almost daily.
Yeah, I turned I used to have my thing beep every time I got a message, not anymore. I just turned it to silence and it doesn't do it. Okay, so for the residents' purposes, and I would offer that you can go to ochealthinfo.com and you can get statistics yourself every day. About 1:30 they update all the information, all the dates, all the statistics. In Orange County, as of this afternoon, there were 2,151 cases cumulatively from the date they started recording till now. So that's, some of these people of the 2,151 have recovered. That's important to know. There have been 42 deaths, and that's, unfortunate, and the numbers will continue to grow, unfortunately. The statistics on how the composition of those deaths is on that website. There have been 27,700 tests taken. Today there were about 34 tests reported, 34 cases reported, I'm sorry, and 3 deaths that were reported. The total number of tests today is about 1,390, and that right now we have 178 people in hospitals. About 74 of those people are in the countywide are in ICU units. What's really important, and I think if you really want to understand and make meaning of these, one, you have to put it in perspective. This is 3.2 million residents that we have. The number of cases, you have to really, what they're really focusing on is the amount of time it takes for the cases to double, and the amount of time, and amount of people in the hospitals. So those are two things, because the way we move through into recovery, and I'm not really a public health expert and have limited some background, but the key here is the reason to flatten the curve is to make sure you don't overwhelm your hospital system and medical system. So if you have 178 cases that are hospitalized, we have far greater than that capacity. Right now, hospitals are reporting somewhere in the range of 50% bed capacity. That's in the county. So that's one of the things that's a criteria if you're looking at. Governor Newsom has said, do you have the capability to reopen? That's a key element. The other thing is ICU units, because unfortunately, if someone goes into ICU, it's not necessarily a good sign, because that means they're on a ventilator, and that's a bad progression of the virus at that point. Villa Park, we are, and I think this is really, really important. Numbers are deceptive. We have 6 cases in Villa Park for residents, total number about 5,900 residents. If you do the math, that puts about 10 cases per 10,000, but we don't have 10,000. We only have 6 cases. So it's a extrapolation. But by comparison, if you look at it, we are significantly under the number, and we have stayed constant for a long time. So the residents of Villa Park are doing a good job of maintaining, and I would hope that they continue to practice social distancing. The key elements, we've already talked about some of the funding opportunities. I won't go back into that about how we can get funding. I would just say that we have opportunities in multiple pots of money, and staff are already working on that to move forward. Recovery is the issue on everybody's mind, and that is something that Governor Newsom talked about today. He sort of has moved away from the concept of what stays open and what stays closed, from essential to non-essential, to more of a phased approach. We're in phase 1 right now. Phase 2 would be sort of phase 2 and phase 3 and moving on is sort of based on a risk assessment. That risk assessment is based on your ability to control continued contamination. In other words, can you practice social distance in the various types of business operations and whatnot that you do? So Some businesses you can see make complete sense. You can do a lot of those things. You go to a grocery store and you see how they've adjusted their business operation. You go to Ralph's here is a really good example. They put up barriers, they've signs on the floors, they've got signage, they've got sanitation people out there cleaning carts and all those kinds of things. So phase 2 would be the non-contact, probably lower risk elements that could move forward in the governor's plan. Phase 3 would be the higher contact, and his specifically saying so where you have to get a haircut, where you have to have physical contact. Those types of things become more and more potential for transmitting is greater. So I think what he's listed, this is his, not ours. So I want to make that real clear. He's talked about that being in the phase 3. Now, phase 4 are more of your congregate, stadium activities, those types of things. Interestingly enough, parks, pools, outdoor settings, they would be in phase 2. We're in phase 1 now. It is a matter of weeks at most, not months, that we move into phase 2. That's according to him, based on numbers, etc. However, it all bases on, you saw his criticism of opening the beaches, and there were a lot of people on the beaches, and he felt they were crowded, too crowded, etc., and it concerned him. So it's a common sense, practical application of social distancing. Now, the County Board of Supervisors approved a set of guidelines today, and it unfortunately, I don't want to say it helps clarify the picture, but it also muddies the picture a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to let Todd sort of talk about that a little bit, because there's some question about what orders stay in place and whatnot. So Todd, could you help us on this?
Yeah, so the governor in Executive Order N3320 back in March issued a stay-at-home order. And in connection with that stay-at-home order, only certain types of businesses were allowed to operate that we've all heard ad infinitum now, essential business operations, and with all the safeguards in place as determined by the California Department of Health. The county business opening guidelines are a framework for working within that state paradigm, but they do not open up businesses within Orange County. That is still governed by the executive order. So as we move through this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, that will be directed by the state. And these guidelines that the county put together are, just as they say, guidelines to help us as we go through those phases. So that in sum is how it is. Some people are saying that the county opened up business today. Well, that's not the case. These are guidelines for as we move through this progression of reopening society. So that's my comment.
So I would add that we are in a different reality. Things change extremely quick. I am probably on, I used to say I thought about 4 or 5 conference calls a week. Now, if it's 4 or 5 a day, I feel lucky. It is a little bit challenging to stay up abreast of everything and all that's going on. But I would say that each one of you, the council, has done a really good job of sort of staying with it. I would add that you're probably going to see some changes in City Hall when we do reopen along the same lines. In other words, we're not going to allow as many people in the waiting area. You're going to see masks. You're going to see sanitizer on the front counter and maybe partitions a little higher and those kinds of things. So I think even the city is going to change operations a little bit. We have to. But it still doesn't mean we don't want to provide the highest quality level service for the residents of Villa Park. And I think we're going to continue to strive so. We also have to protect our residents. So with that in mind, last week, and I advised the council, we reached out to all our businesses, and we started to apprise them of issues, and we wanted a checklist of things that they needed to consider as part of them, and what social distancing meant to them. Masks, testing, employee awareness, all those kind of customer protection, signage, whatever the case may be. So we went out and approached those. So we have all of our businesses are already responding back to us, or many of them are, in a very responsive way, which I would expect nothing less from the businesses that do such a good job here. But anyway, they're coming back to us and sharing with us. This is going to be with us, and if you listen to people, I think you're going to hear that the new reality of masks and social distancing probably will be with us until a vaccine is developed. And I'm not, Mayor Pro Tem Miles and I've had long discussions. She knows a lot more the biomechanics of all this, but it's my understanding that probably 18 to 24 months before a federally FDA approved virus is available on a large scale, maybe sooner. I have a hard time. That seems like a long time to me with all the great minds we have in this country, but I defer to people that like Mayor Pro Tem Miles and those people who have the expertise. So I'm optimistic that there's a vaccine, but I think until then, I think we're going to have to expect a kind of a new social reality that we have to deal with. We also have a very healthy population. Our average age in Villa Park is 59. So when you keep that in mind, we have a potentially vulnerable population. So we have to be cognizant, and we want our businesses to be cognizant of protecting our residents. So that's our focus, and the city's trying to be out as front and as transparent. And I would offer that I'm more than willing to talk to anybody. I know the council members are more than willing to talk to anybody about the concerns and issues. So we'd love to hear from the residents if they're so inclined to talk to us. But anyway, and then Mayor, obviously I have my monthly grid, which I provided with activities. And as you can see on our agenda, we're continuing moving forward with city business. The show must go on, and we're trying to keep it moving. So that's my report. I can answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
I'd like to echo what's been said earlier too, though, Steve. You've done a great job of keeping us all informed, keeping us all updated. The number of emails that we're getting probably pales in comparison to all the meetings that you're doing, but there's a lot of information out there that you're continuing to pass along from the federal to county level, and I really appreciate that. Great job.
Anybody else? Okay, and now it's time for us to hear individual council member information items. And let's start with Mayor Pro Tem Crystal Miles.
Well, I want to say also, Steve, I did what everyone's saying, but I don't want to say it too much because you'll probably get a really big head. Just kidding. No, you are. We're very fortunate to have you as our city manager and your years and years and years of experience in city government. I have nothing to report other than gaining about 19 pounds from COVID-19 from all this.
Join the crowd.
No, but on a serious note, I'm very, very honored to be a part of this council with our staff that we have. And our city is extremely lucky. We must, without jinxing it, knocking on wood somewhere, we must be doing something right because our number, God willing, has not increased for a while. Please don't jinx it. So I just want to say, I understand the frustrations everyone's feeling. I understand the craziness, but I also love seeing how many families are out and about and their bikes, their skates. My dog tends to have to talk to everybody, so she lets everyone know she lives on that corner. So she's not mean to say hi, but I just hope everyone's doing well and healthy, and our community is 100% just on board. So I want to thank everyone and thank Steve and our staff. And I know that it's been difficult for some of the girls to be working from home and whatnot. And I understand as a business owner in Orange, the trials and tribulations that this has created. So, I think everyone's doing their best, and I cannot wait till we can all, high five or hug or shake again. So that's it. Just hope everyone's well and stays healthy.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you, by the way, for taking the reins a few minutes ago. I appreciate that.
Hey, I did a really good job.
I know you did. Probably better than me. Councilman Rossini.
Thank you, Mayor Pitts. Obviously, want to give thanks to Steve for all his efforts, and you, Mr. Mayor, for your efforts and working with county leaders and all the time that you're spending, and Steve for his true leadership. He didn't have to take a pay cut. He did that because he loves the city. He loves what he does, And that really shows an incredible level of integrity and leadership on his part. So thank you. On a personal note, I, like many of you, have been on Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call related to city matters. Most recently on April 23rd on an ACCOC, easy for me to say, Zoom call with a number of county and city officials, including CEOs of UCI, City of Hope, and representatives from several other hospitals, including Saddleback. Very positive news, very encouraging news. It looks like the county's going to be ramping up testing here. They're already doing a great job. By comparison to other counties within the United States, of course, and even California. Be that as it may, I really want to encourage everybody, whether you're 16 or 66, please continue to maintain your social distance, wear a mask when you're out in public, because I really think one of the most important things besides just remaining healthy is to heed those warnings so we can all get back to work. I mean, a few of us are blessed to have essential jobs and work in essential occupations, but my heart goes out to those that are scared. They're concerned about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to pay their kids' tuition, how they're going to make their next mortgage payment or rent payment. And the only way that we can get back to normal is by working together to heed those guidelines, the presidential guidelines, and the decrees from the governor and our county health authorities. And also want to echo what Division Chief Barrick Hunter mentioned about pool safety. I know myself, I've been in the pool loads with the kids. Please be careful, watch your gates so that toddlers don't go into your pool area. Be mindful, always have an adult out there, swim buddy, what have you. And thank you for everybody, your encouraging words on Nextdoor and other social media, and city staff, thank you very much. That's all I got. Oh, and support Villa Park local businesses, please.
Thank you, Councilman Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mayor Pitts. So wow, I'm so impressed by our council, Mr. Rosini, that your words are right on cue. Also, Ms. Miles are perfect. The thing that we're trying to encourage in terms of making sure that everybody continues to keep the curve flattened, I think is so invaluable in this time. And I just hope that everybody's continuing with that. I'd like to say a couple things. So first, I have gotten to meet with the Rotary Group, which continues to do Zoom meetings on Thursday mornings, which are fantastic. And I also got the great fortune to participate with a Rotary program called Project Shield, where we made over 51,000 face shields as part of the Rotary District 5320 for Orange County and surrounding area. Phenomenal program. Everybody showed up at facilities where businesses had donated space, kept strong distancing, made sure everybody's hands were clean, made these pristine face shields that went out then to various, so the Rotary Club of Villa Park in particular sponsored 3,250 masks. They went to, in batches, they split that up in about 3 even batches, and they went out to area hospitals. Gosh, the hospital and medical staff are, so on top of all of this, but they're struggling with a lot of the basic materials, and getting these face shields has really turned a lot of them around. They were looking at having to possibly share face masks or putting them under ultraviolet light so they could kill them and reuse them. Getting an additional supply, having that was such a phenomenal thing that the Rotary Club and your neighbors, the Rotary Club of Villa Park, went out and did. It's truly amazing. So just wanted to give a shout out to them and say how proud I am to know the Villa Park Rotarians and know that they're really contributing in this time. I mentioned medical professionals. I did want to remind people that if you are getting sick, go out and see your doctor. like make sure that it doesn't get any worse. One of the best things you can do is preventing future illness. Your doctors know exactly what to do to keep you and the rest of their staff safe. They're implementing programs to make sure that they're not passing on COVID to others. So if you need a doctor, go make that appointment, go get it done. It's very important that everybody watches their health and continues to stay healthy. So I just want to encourage that too. Beyond that, the message to support our local businesses, 100%, please do. I'm certainly doing my part with the local restaurants and doing what I can to eat out and to make sure that we're supporting our local businesses. Again, I want to say one more thing. So I worked from home for a long time, and the one thing that continues to make things better for people over time working from home is seeing others. So start a Zoom meeting. Go call your neighbors, call people that you're used to talking to, set it up so that you're watching each other face to face. It really makes a difference. We've had the emergency meetings with the council, and just seeing our group and our people get together and talk about what we need to talk about, it really makes the isolation a little bit better. So that's my one recommendation I just wanted to toss out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for what you and the Rotary Club are doing for the Face Shields initiative and stuff like that. It's amazing what you all have been able to accomplish. Councilman Colacott? Mute.
There we
There you
go.
go. There
Okay.
you go.
I'd like to echo the comments from the previous council members, particularly with regard to the good work of our city manager. There's one additional item I'd like to commend our city manager on, and that is, we all know that this situation is going to loosen up in the near future. And I'd like to commend him for putting together plans and procedures to get us back up and operating right away as soon as the governor allows. I was in City Hall earlier today, and I actually saw on the counter some drawings for, appears like you're going to be raising the partitions so that our city staff can work safely together in their cubicles. And you mentioned putting out hand sanitizers and other items. So again, good proactive foresight. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Councilman. I'd like to do a few thank yous. First of all, I'd like to thank the city residents and the city council for going through this new world, new environment with Zoom and city council and so forth. I think I experience it every day. You know, I meet with customers, I meet with people constantly day after day, as a lot of you do in this same environment. So we kind of get used to it, but there are a lot of people on this call that may be experiencing it for the very first time. And we certainly welcome any comments that you might have for improvements. Send those to info@villapark.org. But thank you all for your indulgence and your participation tonight in what we're going through. I also want to thank the entire council for all of your social media updates that you all have provided over the course of the last several weeks and a few months since this whole thing started. I think it's important that we continue to update our constituents on what's going on in the community, as well as what's going on that we're aware of. I mean, I personally attend the president's task force call every week. I'm also on a mayor task force in Orange County. Someone signed me up for a chat line on text, and there are 34 other mayors on it. So my phone is burning up about every 2 seconds with input from the various mayors. So I appreciate that. But thank you so much to all the council. Continue to do that, because we all have different connections, different people that we interact with, people that see our Facebook pages and next door and so forth and so on. And the more information we put out there, I think it makes our constituents feel so much more comfortable and better about the progress of things if we keep them informed. unfortunately, a lot of people are looking at the national news, and I'm not sure I was a news junkie at one time and decided to turn it off for the most part because I could get more from the updates and things like that than I do on the world news. So, Steve, once again, thank you so much. You know what, you and I are on a lot of calls together and separately, and appreciate all your effort there. Couple of one personal note before we go. The Theodore Roosevelt, I know you've all seen that in the news recently. It's the carryover in Guam. We have many of our sailors and Marines that are unfortunately quarantined on Guam. I think they took over basically most of the hotels and resorts there. My granddaughter happens to be one of those that are quarantined in the hotel. Fortunately, she does not have the COVID-19 virus at this point. She's been confined to quarters. They're each put in single hotel rooms. They're fed 3 meals a day, but they're confined to quarters have been for almost 30 days now. She says about 2 more weeks before they try to go back to sea. But those sailors and you know, our soldiers are going through a lot right now with that whole situation in Guam, and I hope you'll say a prayer for them. There's a couple other things. You know, the community lost 2 pillars or 2 people over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I want to pay tribute to them. First, we lost Craig Alexander, who was a long-term Rotarian, gave service to our community. He and his wife Molly moved out of the community some time ago and moved to Arizona, where he passed away, not from COVID-19, but I want to wish Molly and the family our best wishes and prayers. And also, we lost a tremendous pillar here in Villa Park. Frank DeSantis passed away recently. Frank and Eileen have been in this community for over 50 years and have been pillars in this community, their entire family. You know, I want to reach out to the entire DeSantis family on behalf of the City Council and just say how sorry we are. You're in our prayers, and if there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So that's my update. Thank you very much. Steve, is there anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
We will have a special meeting on May 11th. So you know, the budget workshop.
Okay. And our next city council meeting is scheduled for May 26th at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to say that we'll do it in person, but for right now, we'll plan on this environment going forward until we get the release. So I'll adjourn the meeting until the next council meeting. Hope everyone's safe and has a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank
See
you
all.
Bill, good night.
Touch.